All right, so in this segment, we are going to talk about DNA. Specifically, we're going to talk about the structure of DNA. You have one learning target from this module, and that is I can model the structure of DNA. Now, whenever I ask students to draw a picture of DNA, they always draw something that looks a little bit like that. Well, certainly you've seen this before, right? So it's been in movies like Jurassic Park and Spider-Man. And I mean, come on, it's DNA, right? Everybody knows what DNA looks like. Well, actually, we haven't always known what DNA looks like. The true structure of DNA was first proposed by two scientists. Their names were James Watson and Francis Crick. And they published a very famous paper in 1953, sorry for the typo, where they described DNA as a double helix. Double meaning two, and a helix referring to that curly-Q shape. So if you put two of those together, what you end up with is something that looks like DNA. There it is. So here's our double helix, our model of DNA. So if I were to ask you to model the structure of DNA, I'm sure you could probably draw that. But the important part about any model is not just that you can draw it, but that you can tell me what each of the pieces are. So I want you to imagine for a moment that you can take that twisted ladder right here and you could untwist it. Okay? So imagine the sides of the ladder are in this model represented by these gray bands. Now imagine you could take that twisted ladder and untwist it, and what you get is something like what you see here on the left. Here are the gray bands, one on the right and one on the left. And those two bands are called sugar phosphate backbones. Clever name, isn't it? I know. So the sides of this ladder are composed of alternating phosphate molecules, or as a chemist would write them, PO4. You can see those represented by those little circles right there. And also the sugar, which we call deoxyribose. That D in deoxyribose is the D in DNA. So again, on the right, we've got one of these sugar phosphate backbones. And then again, on the left, you see another sugar phosphate backbones. Now, the sugar phosphate backbones, they're important, right? They hold the structure of DNA together. But the sugar phosphate backbones are not the important part of the DNA molecule. The important part of the DNA molecule, the part that stores your genetic information, the part that makes your eyes blue or brown or green, that information is stored in the center of the DNA molecule on these white rungs here in the middle connecting the two base pairs. You'll see those represented here in the middle. We call those rungs of the ladder base pairs. The word pair meaning two, of course, and as you can see, each of the base pairs are composed of these two molecules that are bonded together. The rungs of the ladder, which connect the two sugar phosphate backbones, are made up of a class of molecules that we call nitrogenous bases. There are four types of nitrogenous bases found in DNA molecules, and they are usually represented by the letters A and T, and also G and C. The A stands for adenine, and the T for thymine. whereas the G stands for guanine and the C for cytosine. You will notice that all of these end in the suffix -ine. That's the chemist's way of saying that there is nitrogen in them. So if we look back at our molecule, we see in this model that there are 5 base pairs. Now, each of those bases in these base pairs are held to their neighbor by these weak bonds right here in the middle, and those bonds are called hydrogen bonds. Those are some of the weakest chemical bonds. In fact, if you take DNA and put it in some warm water, pretty warm water, but not quite boiling, it'll actually untwist the DNA and it will separate these 2 parts of the DNA molecule. They will actually come unzipped in the center. We call that denaturing. So anyway, one of the things that I want you to notice about the base pairs is that whenever there is an A on one side, it is always bonded on the complementary side to a T. Furthermore, when there is a G on one side, that G is always bonded to a C. So that's important. I need you to remember that. That's going to be important later when we talk about DNA replication. And again, the A's are always bonded to a T. Now I remember that because A and T, those letters can be written using only straight lines, whereas the letters C and G require curvy lines to write them. So C and G always bind together, just like A and T always bind together. So there's one more thing that I want you to be able to show me on a model of DNA, and that is the building block, or the monomer of the DNA molecule. So if you will, look down here at the bottom left-hand corner, you see this box that is enclosing one phosphate molecule, one sugar molecule, deoxyribose, and one base. This one happens to be a guanine base. What I want you to see is that DNA is nothing more than a stack of these building blocks, some with A's, some with T's, some with G's, and some with C's, connected on the other side to a stack of building blocks made out of the same stuff, right? One phosphate, one sugar, deoxyribose, and one base. Now that unit right there, the fundamental building block of DNA, that has a word, and I need you to know this word. It's called a nucleo, as in nucleus, right? Tide. A nucleotide. Okay, so these are all the pieces and parts of DNA. So the learning target said, I can model the structure of DNA. So now, this model right here that you probably had in your brain before we started this module is no longer acceptable. What I need you to be able to do with this model is I need you to be able to tell me about the sugar phosphate backbones. I need you to be able to model their structure. I need you to be able to show me the base pairs in the center. I need you to be able to show me that the A's always bond with the T's and the C's with the G's. I also need you to be able to identify the nucleotide being comprised of a single phosphate, a single sugar, and a single base. That base could be A, T, G, or C. All right, so I'll see you in the next module.